Hello, my name is Kara Ockendon, and I'm a relationship separation divorce coach of soul healing. I specialize in conscious relating and conscious uncoupling. I'm also a very big advocate of taking a holistic approach to healing and having many resources in your tool belt when it comes to transformational healing, particularly as it relates to your relationships with yourself and with others. And in order to really develop the skills and capacities that you may be lacking and that may be holding you back from having those relationships that you desire and deserve. And this is why today I'm going to be speaking with a lovely embodiment and intimacy coach that I personally work with named Bree. She has been working with me in developing some skills and capacities that I was lacking around, being vulnerable, really connecting deeply, intimately, and speaking my boundaries into the world. This is something that I personally struggle with and that she has really helped me to cultivate and grow with. So I'm so happy to have her with me today and to be speaking with her. So yes, as I was saying, today I'm here with the beautiful Bree. She's a relational intimacy facilitator and embodiment coach. I'll get that right, Bree. Bree is so passionate about helping feminine women heal their relationships to masculine men through cultivating devotion, embodied relating skills. She's also based in Brisbane, around here with me. And like I said, I've personally worked with her over the past bit over 12 months, maybe 15 months. And yeah, I've had so much gains through working with Bree, so I'm very excited to introduce her to my community and let her speak into what she does and how she does it and how she can be of service to you in your transformational healing journey and healing your relationships, with yourself and with your romantic partners. So Bree, thank you for being here today, first and foremost. I'm very happy to have you and most grateful. And I'd love it if you could just... me. Yes. And I would love you to speak a little bit into, who you are, first and foremost, how you got here and why you do it.
Well, you might have to go through one question at a time.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll start with who are you, Bree?
Yeah, who am I? I mean, I consider myself a relational intimacy facilitator and an embodiment coach because of where I've come and the work that has come through me. And so I guess it's helpful maybe to define what those things are, because probably people don't know what on earth does that mean.
Yes.
For me, intimacy is a sense of vulnerability is a great word to actually describe intimacy. So there is self-intimacy, my awareness of my own body, my relationship to my own body. So can I feel my body? How is it in this moment? Or am I so in my head that I can't really notice what's happening anywhere else and the feedback my body's giving me? And teaching people how to have that awareness, particularly women. I work predominantly with women now, but we need to have self-intimacy first before we can connect with someone else. And the common issue I find with couples and singles is that we don't have enough awareness of ourselves. And so I do a lot of work with helping women to come back into their bodies. I did yoga. I still do yoga, but I did yoga for a long time and I thought I was in my body. And then I started doing embodiment and I discovered actually really wasn't in my body for a really long time. And so that's a little bit of a sense of, what embodiment is and the concept of intimacy as well, that we need to kind of fuse both to have healthy relationships with someone else. So it's not even an answer to your question. It's more of an explanation, but, my passion is fusing the two of them. Yes. And helping people to have really healthy relationships from that place, not from our wounds and our traumas and our pains and our stories, but from a whole body desire to connect. So it's a spiritual experience and a transformative journey for both people.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, Bree. And I really resonate what you said there about the, I've also engaged in yoga for many, many years and, worked in my body from that perspective, but it's different again. And this is where like I said before, I'm so passionate about having multiple tools in your tool belt, because not everything is the same and not everything achieves the same results. It's like working holistically with all of these tools with you to achieve that. And again, I also resonate about that coming into self and self-intimacy, because that's certainly something that I know that I have been personally lacking. And I've been working on that quite a bit through my own tools and resources as well, but also through your offerings and really coming into that embodied self and moving through those emotions through your body. So they're not staying stagnant, and we're very conscious of, what's alive and what's present. So perhaps you can tell me a little bit now, what brought you here? So what happened in your life that's brought you in this path to find you in this space? Because it's not your everyday profession or service that individuals, that you wouldn't have gone to school and thought, one day I'm going to grow up and be an embodiment coach. I wouldn't have any idea what it was. So how did you get here?
It's a kind of a long story, so I'm just contemplating how to, keep it fairly short.
Yeah.
I ended up studying hypnotherapy. So I did a whole lot of Tony Robbins stuff, 20 odd years ago was the beginning. I think 25 years ago now was the beginning of my journey really into this world of personal development and self-awareness. And so I did all the Tony Robbins for years, and so it was all mind over matter. And to me, from where I sit now, a very masculine perspective on self-development, and no criticism on that. It's just, I would do it differently now. And so I came through the fire walking and the take responsibility for myself and think myself into a great place. And I studied NLP and I studied hypnotherapy and became a clinical hypnotherapist and thought I knew how to have a better relationship than my parents had had. They divorced when I was 14, or split up when I was 14. And so I remember really wanting to have a better relationship when I found a long-term partner, and we had a child, and he's now 14. And yet we still fell into a lot of the same ruts that our parents, we were aware of them, but we still fell into them. And it really frustrated both of us. And it wasn't until that I did a lot of tantra and a lot of work into really exploring my relationship to my body, because I didn't have a lot of confidence around libido and sexual expression and all the things that are so normal for me now. Back then, they were not in that relationship. And it wasn't until that relationship actually ended that I was like, I really need to do something different. And so I literally stopped being a clinical hypnotherapist. It's like, I don't just want to work with the mind because it's not working for me. Meaning I'm stuck in my mind. I'm not in my body. I can't access pleasure. I don't know how to speak up for myself. I don't have embodied boundaries, all these terms which possibly are normal to you, but maybe not to the people listening. But, it's like I literally woke up and realized there was a whole other world out there. And so the tantric perspective for me is very yogic, meaning it's a whole body practice. And it wasn't until I went through the pain of that relationship ending that I realized I need to change a lot of shit in my life if I want to not make this mistake again. I looked into attachment wounds. I did lots of kink exploration. I did lots of trauma release and shadow work. And I'm the kind of person, when pain is created in my life, I really, really don't ever want to experience that again. And I take a lot of self-responsibility, and I read a lot of books and I go on all the courses. And so that's what I did. I just became obsessed but by how to have a better relationship. I always wanted it, but I didn't have the connection between the mind and the body link that was missing when I read Tantra books back then. So it wasn't until that happened that I was like, well, I can do whatever I want and I'm going to fix this in myself. Because I did think that I was broken back then. And so that really revealed to me how disembodied I was. And then all of a sudden shadow work became a thing. And so through that pathway, I started to realize it's great to be a clinical hypnotherapist, but if I'm not connected to my body, I'm missing this whole other thing. And so that created so much change in me that I realized, well, a lot of people are making the same mistakes.
Yes.
So that's how I ended up here, through a very painful experience and a lot of desire to make things better in the future. And so I'm always on that path, actually.
I so see you in that, because it sounds like we had a very similar journey there. And again, like many of us, we started in the more masculine personal development sort of programs, and you get a lot out of that, and there's a lot of value to be taken from that. However, there's also great value from what I'm learning from working with yourself, like from the feminine perspective, and bringing that in as well and integrating that. I just wanted to clarify with that shadow work, because I'm very familiar with that term, but other people may not know what that means.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, how would you define sort of shadow work?
So from clinically, they use this term in psychology as well. And the way it's usually termed is the deep recesses of the mind, the parts that we are not consciously aware of, meaning they're unconscious challenges. The way that I would define it more now is it's the parts of us that we avoid, repress, or shame. And so, if we think about an example of relationship, the thing I'm talking about a bit at the moment is the sexual expression, because it's really common that one or both people in the relationship have shut down some of their sexual expression. And so they push it into the back corners of the mind. They push it into the shadows. And this has a closing down effect in the body. But also it's related to the mind. It's like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to talk about that. It's not okay. I'm afraid, or I'm scared, or it's just yucky, or it's dirty. And so all these things are signs that we have shadows. When we're having that kind of a really strong, no, I'm not going there kind of response is an indication of a shadow, total avoidance.
Yes.
Or we don't even want to admit that we have parts of that in us.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not work for the faint-hearted, let's put it that way. It's very murky, it's very challenging. It brings up a lot of emotions, like digging into those depths and allowing yourself to accept those, but first see those parts
that
of you.
We're not perfect.
And then accept them and see that it doesn't mean that you're bad, you're wrong, you're broken, all of those things. And that's all the work that we do.
Everyone has an unconscious, right? Yeah. So everyone has parts of us that we're aware of and we're not aware of. But the more we bring the unconscious into the conscious, the more we bring it from the dark or the shadow into the light, where we can go, oh, look at this part of me that I'm so ashamed of, that I wish I never had. But guess what? Just about everyone else has aspects of that. And the beauty of this work is the more that we bear these parts of ourselves to our partners particularly, then they realize, well, they probably knew that anyway, to be honest. If it's a healthy relationship, we normally know these things about each other, but then we're willing to admit it. Oh, I'm so scared of this. I'm so scared of losing you, or I'm so scared of telling you this part of me that feels inadequate. That creates intimacy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So that is the link to intimacy that I touched on at the beginning, and that's why it's so powerful. Without that, we've got a big wall between us. It's like, I can see you, but you can't feel me, and I can't feel you. Until we start to own our shadows and be vulnerable enough to acknowledge them and to let others in and acknowledge we're not perfect, then real intimacy starts to happen and real change starts to happen.
Yes. And for me as well, in doing that process, once you learn to accept and acknowledge those parts of yourself and be compassionate and forgiving of yourself, well, then you can expand that to others in your life who, maybe show up in ways that you don't love about them, but you can see them in a different light. You can get access to that compassion. You can access that grace and that forgiveness a lot easier because you're accepting that part of yourself. Right? If you can accept that part of yourself, you can accept it in others, and vice versa. And that has a really healing effect. And that's the work that I do as well, is helping bring those unconscious parts to the shadows, and then we can confront them and transform them. And I love the work that you do in bringing that, giving people the skills to actually bring that into relationship. I mean, obviously I'm a single woman at the moment, so I'm not in that romantic partnership, but there's ways to also integrate that into your other relationships as well, like with parents, my son's father, and other relationships, and just bringing that vulnerability in there. And it's not easy work, and it takes practice and time. And yes, so tell me, who do you work with in this sphere, and how are you currently facilitating this transformation within them?
So my biggest passion is really working with women, because I am one. And so I love men, but I also don't feel like I can speak completely to men because I'm not in a male body and I haven't had the experience that they have had. So my preference is to work with women because that's my own lived experience, and we have a lot of the same challenges. And so I guess areas that I'm really passionate about is something I mentioned in my story is loss of libido, bringing back awareness of our own body and helping us as women to reclaim through embodiment practices our pleasure. Because when we outsource our pleasure, we're putting it on our partner. I did that for a long time. It was like, well, it's his responsibility to turn me on. So learning how to turn myself on was really important. And embodiment is the best way to do that. It doesn't have to be through, vibrators and things like that. So it's such a powerful thing when we look at, the yogic aspect of Tantra. So that's one of my key passions with women, is really bringing our bodies back online and helping us to then use embodiment to do shadow work. As you know, it's a big part of everything that I teach, because I don't think we can move forward. We've still got this anchor holding us back from, to our pains and our traumas, which again, we all have, but we need to own it. We need to kind of accept it and have compassion for it, as you said, which allows us to show up more in the world and have compassion for others. So they're quite key areas for me. And the other area I'm really, really passionate about is polarity and devotion, and where they meet each other. And so polarity, if you're unfamiliar, is the pull of opposing forces. So when we talk about masculine, feminine, or men and women, we're different biologically and physically and energetically. And when you put two people together who are different, what tends to happen is there's this pull of like, ooh, I want to know more about you, or you're interesting to me. And that, in a sense, is polarity. Attraction that happens early in relationship. A lot of people think that that's just chemical, but it's actually, a lot of it is naturally created through polarity. So learning how to maintain it in the relationship when it dies, or if it dwindles, because again, that happened. I was married in partnership for 17 years. So it's a lot to maintain for that long. And so polarity was the thing that I discovered keeps that alive. So I'm very, very passionate about helping men and women to bring that, and then overlaying that with the embodied relating skills and devotion. And so what that means to me is helping women particularly to be in deep devotion to their men in the way that our world is aching for. I think like there's such a wound here, men wanting to be seen as men, be accepted as men, and not have to show up in all these ways that they think we want as women, and they're trying to please us, but they're confused. And us as women learning to accept a man's gifts, and him learning to accept ours, and that we're different. And so there's a beautiful energy where the polarity and the acceptance of our difference, and this magic of devotion where we really appreciate and honor the sacredness of each other in a moment, or in a partnership, or in rituals, or in practice together, where, as I know you know, Kara, it's just, there's not even words. It's a transcendent experience of feeling connected beyond words and beyond the moment. It's quite magical, actually. And so that's what I love to teach the most.
Yeah, it is really magical. It's a whole new level of experience when you're in that ritual space. And like you say, connecting without words, and just through energy and embodiment of the emotion, or just the energy you're looking to embody. Like, for example, like we had the devotion temple last weekend, and just really accessing that energy for a lot of us, which is new as well. Like even a lot of us aren't even familiar with devotion and what it actually is and what it truly means in, I suppose, not just in romantic partnership, but what it would mean to be devoted to, the opposite gender in that way, and being okay with that. Because even myself, you're very aware that I had to move through a lot of conditioning and a lot of wounding to even access that. And it's a really powerful healing tool for men and women, because this is not a one-sided problem that we have here. Men have a lot of wounds and pains around women as well, in the way that women have and have not been able to hold them and see them and accept them and love them. So this is where it's really powerful, but I do feel it can be difficult to access sometimes. So I just want to speak into a little bit more around that, around the work that you do. I mean, I know you're primarily focusing on women at this point in time about devotion, but the work that you do there to help women move through some of those as well.
I think the devotion piece is so it's so not talked about enough. And what comes up for me as we talk about it now is that I feel a lot of people have a lot of resistance around this word. Particularly, women will often say to me, oh, I can't do that. Well, we are actually coded, meaning made, to be devotional beings. Like if you think about the love you have for your child, when you just want to make sure that they have the food that makes them happy, or the things in their room that makes them feel cozy and loved, or the clothes they need, like those simple things are acts of devotion. And so often we do these things, but we don't put that word on it, because sometimes there's loading around devotion. So people can think that it's a spiritual cult, or they can link it to things like submission. Like if I'm in devotion to a man, or if a man's in devotion to me, then we're enmeshed and we've got unhealthy aspects to our relationship. That is possible, but generally the people who want that kind of relationship are coming in at a really high level of awareness of this is us journeying together to expand our connection as partners, to reach sacred union, to be in remembrance of our divinity, and we are helping each other along that way, versus holding each other back and blaming each other and shaming each other. Again, all those shadowy pieces. Like the devotion piece is, for me, it's a moment by moment experience. And the more we do the embodiment, the more we clean up our shadows, the more we can show up in this moment and be brave enough to be vulnerable. And then devotion can be there, or then love can be there, or then appreciation can be there from both sides. Doesn't matter about the gender. And it's not, for me, about service to someone else. It's about, like, we're in service to love, and love is moving through us. That for me is the most devotional moment ever, when it's like love is moving through my body and I don't even know what's going to happen. I just know I feel like I want to go here. I feel like I want to do that. And there's a pull, a really strong energetic pull. So it is really hard to explain, except just to get a sense that it is beyond the everyday mundane. And most of us want a relationship that's like that. Even if it's only occasionally, we want to know how to access that, versus feeling bored and monotonous, or taken advantage of, or not appreciated, or all the resentments built up and there's all these gaps where we can't connect to each other, versus just like laying down our weapons, being exposed enough to be honest and all, like, raw and vulnerable with each other. Like, those things are all part of a devotional moment as well. There's no guarding.
Yeah, absolutely. You're quite right about that. And it's also unconditional. Like all those things that you're speaking to then about when you're speaking, I feel like when it comes to our children, it's so easy to be devoted for them, because it's like they're defenseless, right? Whereas when it comes to our romantic partners, like these other things will come up. Well, they're capable, they can do it. Why am I doing it? Like, as opposed to just giving without the expectation that we need to receive something back. But also in the flip side, fully appreciating when someone is giving you the same in their own unique way, in their own capacity to do so. And men and women tend to do that differently. And that's the other key thing that is being so apparent in this journey with you. And even on Saturday evening, when the men and women were sharing separately what they love about the opposite gender and how their energy lights them up and feels them, and what they appreciate about each other. They're different things, but it's uniquely masculine, uniquely feminine. It's our differences that we love about each other.
Yeah.
And when we can really appreciate that, as opposed to being critical about those,
or using them as weapons to hurt each other.
Yes, that's right. So there's beauty to be accessed there. And yes, I can totally understand how some people do get it confused, because even myself have been guilty of being in that space where to be devoted means that we're being submissive, or we're accepting
or under control, under someone's control.
Yeah, it's being controlled, and being subject to or accepting, toxic femininity or toxic masculinity, which is your unhealthy behaviors. But that's not what this is about. This is about acknowledging the healthy aspects. We're not going to be sitting here being devoted to the the toxic man or toxic woman who is, creating an unhealthy dynamic within the relationship. We're here to heal those things. So again, I would like to ask you now, is there anything else you'd like to share around that and the ways that you're working with
before
men?
I get to that, there's something that I would like to say around the devotion thing that you were talking
Yeah.
about, which I think it's really a great reminder for us and for people who aren't familiar with this concept. So there's this idea that David Data talks about 3 stages of relationship. And I really love this analogy when you talk about the toxic through to the devotion. So the first stage is often termed selfish. And this is where we can get into really highly enmeshed, codependent, wounded dynamics with each other. I need you, but I kind of hate you, but I kind of love you, but I still need you. So it's really quite abusive. There can still be love and care there, but it's not healthy in the ways that we know that it could be. Maybe at the time we're not aware of that, but, you know, in retrospect, particularly abusive environments fall into this. Once we start to evolve through that from this highly enmeshed dependent state, we come into the second stage, which is healthy, but it's also the polarity tends to die because we become like housemates, business partners. We can rely on each other, but we don't really want to have sex that much. We kind of spend a lot of time together. So we literally lose that difference and that spark that is the organic origin of polarity or, you know, attraction. But then this is where a lot of us get stuck. I know I got stuck here in my marriage. It's like, how do we get to this next level? And this is where the devotion comes in. Stage 3 is when we choose to make the vehicle of the relationship the sacred path that is going to help us to evolve. When we choose to show up to it like that, which means putting our ego aside. It doesn't mean you're my master, so I have to do everything for you. That would be down in the toxic level. It's this relationship is opening me and it's opening you and it's opening us. It's helping us to evolve. And so we put our own agenda aside, which is why the shadow work thing is so important. We have to be able to transcend that enough to go, I'm in devotion to this moment, or I'm in devotion to this relationship because it serves me, even if it's uncomfortable sometimes, it serves me to be here with you and it serves you to be here with me. And so we're both all in at the best of our capacity. And it's a very different dynamic. It can look the same from the outside to someone who doesn't know any different, but it doesn't feel the same. I can tell you it's very, very different.
And it's a whole different energy and a whole different mindset and perspective of relationship. And therefore, the way you're going to move through relationship challenges in terms of, like, in your body and in your emotions and your energy is going to be completely different because you've just got a whole different perspective, which is really quite beautiful.
And the word that we often use at that third stage is interdependence. So from codependent to more independent and like, yeah, we can just all do it ourselves, to interdependence, which is like, I can do it and you can do it, but what if we do it together?
Yeah.
Like it's quite liberating, but it's like they are stages of evolution. We kind of have to go through the pain of learning how to separate in the second stage to then be able to then come back together and know that we are separate, but we are one at the same time. And so it takes awareness and work and a little bit of painful stuff to move through usually.
Yes. Yeah. And I love what you touch on there about interdependence, because for a lot of people, their relationships are not interdependent and they're not used as a vehicle for mutual growth and understanding and awareness. That's just, and for all of us, we just weren't taught that. We weren't modeled that. We didn't know what codependent meant. We certainly knew what it looked like because that's what we grew up with or were exposed to, but we didn't know well, we probably had some awareness that it wasn't what we wanted, but we didn't know what we do want.
What else do we do instead when we don't have a roadmap for it?
That's right. So, yeah, I love that you touched on that and gave that sort of pathway through from here to here, because I feel for a lot of people, myself included, that's where we're coming from. We're coming from down here and working our way up to transform that spiral up and have those relationships that we all desire. Like, it's not one-sided. Like, that's what we all want deep down inside. For anyone who is a well-intended human being who's not suffering from some deep seated ailment of mentalness or mental disorder. But majority of us, that's what we would hope, and that's what we desire, and we're all the one in that sense, in that desire.
Yeah, and what I believe is that there is no short path to get there.
No, absolutely not. It's a life journey.
If we use relationship to get this level of spiritual evolution, shall we say, we have to be willing to do the work, the intimacy work with ourselves and with each other, to move through all uncomfortable stuff that comes up along the way as we are evolving in that manner. And so there's no shortcut, but it is worth it, because the amount of people that are at that level of relationship on the planet is very small. Like we talk about like power versus force, if you're familiar with that spectrum, like the high vibration of spectrum that Christ was supposedly vibrating at, pure love. It's like that. It's like we're accessing this really high frequency in our relationships, but can we be there all the time? Maybe not, but can we at least dip in and out of it? But it takes a lot of work to clean ourselves up enough to be able to even access that, because we've got all the shit that it's like literally weighing us down like an anchor. So I guess if anyone's feeling inspired but doubtful, it takes a few years just to start to feel more secure if we're actively working in that level, and then working in this stuff overlays that, and then all of a sudden it gets easier and it starts to feel really quite natural and magical. So
it's
worth the effort.
It is. And I'm so with you on that. It's a journey, and it's not an easy journey, this space, but it's definitely worth the openings. And I look forward to continuing that journey. So, Bree, next thing I'd like to ask you is, how can people work with you? How can people connect with you?
So if you're in Brisbane, I have a few workshops and things that I offer on different frequencies. I have a few mixed gender events where you can come with your partner, or you can come on your own and work with other people, single or partnered. It's great. It's a great way to learn this experience of intimacy that's fully clothed but emotionally vulnerable, and train ourselves to have the experience of that and to make it more normal and more accessible. And then I have a lot of women's only things that I run in the Brisbane region as well, embodiment immersions and evenings where we get more playful. But most of my work at the moment is transitioning to online, actually. So I have a number of online women's group programs, which Kara's done. I think, have you done all of them? You've done at least 2 of them anyway. And so, those will continue to evolve over time. I have a few more in the works that will be coming out later on this year. And I also am going to shortly be launching a 9-month program, which includes all of my programs. And so that is going to be the most exclusive way to get my support, because what I do is very intimate. I don't work with 100 people at a time. I don't take on a lot of private clients. So when I create a container, I like to work really closely with those that I work with. So there is a real level of getting that support, that hands-on support and that guidance, and the reinforcement of the embodied aspects, because everything I do is embodiment-based. It's not like going to a coach or a therapist and just talking. It's like, okay, here's the problem, let's move it through the body. And so it becomes really natural after a while, but it's a very different way of working. But it also makes the change shift faster, and it helps us to move through our discomforts in a completely different way. So I guess there's some of the things that are, pretty exciting for me at the moment in terms of how you can work with me. I also have quite a lot of online programs and things. So, if this is available soon, I have some special sales on my website for mini courses and things that you can get a taste of, things for couples and things for women that I'm offering. So come and check them out if you're interested.
Yes. So just speaking into, I suppose, your containers for embodiment work, it absolutely is something that evolves over time. Like for myself, it's something that's engaging in a number of programs to really implement it in my life and create that shift. It takes time to rewire the brain, and sometimes we need that support of our coaches and our mentors to keep us accountable. I mean, I do, but that certainly helped me. But
I do too.
Yeah. It's like we have our own team of people to will help us work through these things.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on a little bit more around embodiment as a term itself, because I'm just conscious that some people won't really understand necessarily what that means as a practice.
Well, compared to, say, talk therapy, where we might say, sit down and tell me your story, with an embodied experience, I'll be saying, okay, so you're telling me about when you lost your father. How did that actually feel? What happened in your body? And so an embodied experience of that might be like, oh, my heart just feels like it got closed and I felt really heavy and my whole body just wanted to curl up in a ball. And so that's, our relationship to that awareness of our sensory internal world is, in a sense, our awareness of our embodied capacity. And so embodiment is learning how to work with that and how to repattern it through movement, through breath, through consciously implementing practices that help us to open, again, to address our shadows. And because what happens is the body holds the shape and the pattern of our wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we have a wound that I'm too much, or I'm not good enough, or they'll never love me as I am, we walk around holding our body in that kind of shape. And so people talk about, going to therapy for these things, which is great. I was a therapist in that way for a long time, but the body holds the shape of it just as much as the mind, and they're very connected. So until we actually move it through the body and the nervous system and clear it of all the patterns that it's holding, it's really hard to, again, move forward out of those stories of pain and hurt, and we can stay stuck in replicating them. And so embodiment is an amazing tool where we use the whole somatic system, we use the nervous system. So it's repatterning us from the inside out. And the best part is we feel the shifts really quickly. So you don't have to go to therapy for 5 years. You do some embodiment practices, you're going to feel different within 5 minutes, and you're going to feel lasting change if you're doing it regularly over weeks and months. So it's really it's the fastest way I've found. And it's basically a yogic practice. It's not going to a yoga class, but it is a yogic approach, meaning the whole body is engaged. So everyone should be doing it.
And it's body movement as well. I love that about it as well, as you're moving your body. So from that perspective as well, it's exercise, so to speak, because you are moving your body, you're stretching your body, getting all that release. And for me personally, I found it assist a lot with just those my aches and pains as well, because I'm moving my body in the way that it needs, as opposed to the way I think my brain might think.
And it can look different for everyone as well, Kara. Like when we're doing women's embodiment, we're doing things like what you're touching on, like we're moving our body, like we might be moving our hips to open up some pleasure, or we might be moving hips to move discomfort, to access some emotions that are in there, or we might be moving in a way where we want to access devotion or bring a certain energy through to play with expressing some energy to bring polarity to our partners. There's actually a lot of applications that polarity has, which is hard to touch on without really experiencing it. But then there's also using it for trauma release, and there's also using it to kind of step into something that we don't yet have, like a future relationship as well. So it's a whole body tool for change is a really great way to think about it. And for me, it's a medicine, meaning I do it just like I do yoga and walk and do Pilates. It's part of my routine of self-care. It's become my ultimate self-care practice because it works on the nervous system, it works on self-awareness, it works on intimacy, and it's good for the body as well.
Yes, absolutely.
No major downsides that I can see.
No, me either. I haven't come across
and
any.
It's drug-free, so we can have ecstatic states.
Well, it's not just drug-free. It's literally free. Right?
Yeah,
once
it's free.
You know how to do it, it's free.
You don't have to go and pay for a gym membership.
No, you don't have to go to the therapist and pay for that. Obviously, if we're engaging in, some of these great immersions and containers, which are also very worthwhile for their own purposes, but as a daily practice, it's free and it's great.
And once you know those kind of tools, that's the great thing, is we have access to those things that are self-sourced, and so we can know, I'm feeling a certain way, I need to do an embodiment practice that's going to help me to unlock that or to move through it. And guess what? As you said, it didn't cost me anything. So it's like self-motivated therapy once we have the map for how to do it within our own bodies.
Yes, thank you. And how can people contact you, Bree, if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, well, will you put links in, or do I need
will
to
put your links in, so your website.
a long name?
Yes, and you're on Facebook.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I have a website, and I have my online platform where all my programs are, which you can find through my website as well. So I'm on all the main places. I can't see myself going to TikTok anytime soon. I'm also on YouTube. So yeah, reach out and please let me know if you have questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bree. It's so lovely to connect with you always, and I'm very honoured to have this conversation and chat with you and bring that to our audience. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I hope that you continue to offer this amazing service of just education for people that are working with you, because I feel really excited for them to get access to this information that is not so conventionally available.
Yes,
so thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Happy Friday.
Okay.